Well, despite President Trump's attempt at clarifying his statements on Russian election meddling yesterday, questions remain about his views on the issue and how they could undermine the U.S. intelligence community. The president said on Twitter earlier today that his critics hate the fact that he got along well with Vladimir Putin, and he blamed their views on, quote, Trump derangement syndrome. CBS News senior national security analyst Fran Townsend joins me now. She was Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to President George W. Bush. Thank you so much for joining us, Fran. You heard the president yesterday clarify and reiterate, he says that he said this many times before, that he accepts the findings of the intelligence community that Russia meddled in the 2016 election. But even within that statement, it appeared as if he went off the script and said, could have been other people as well. Let's just play a little bit of that.
Sure.
Let me be totally clear in saying that, and I've said this many times, I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also. There's a lot of people out there. There was no collusion at all.
Okay. A lot of people out there. I want to get your reaction when you heard that.
So, two things, right? That sort of clarification comes 26 hours after his statement in Helsinki, which is very different.
Not just that, he did do an interview. He did an interview with Fox after the press conference. He had plenty of opportunity to clarify.
And that's my point, right? Having worked in a White House, presidents misspeak. They're human beings. That's fine. You have a staff around you. They would have either he would have had him fix it in his very first interview. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was with him and could have advised him to clean it up there. Or you would have had her come out or issue a written statement. But the notion that 26 hours went by, first of all, suggests this was not, he had to be dragged here. This was not, he didn't just sort of realize he misspoke a word.
Right.
Second, the wooden thing is awfully tortured, right? I mean, if you look at the greater context of what he said, it doesn't look like he made a mistake at all. And third, I'd say, look, trying to embrace the intelligence community sitting at the White House in the cabinet room in the safety of the United States is one thing. To deny them standing next to an adversary on foreign soil is quite another. And I think he's going to have to go a good distance to repair his relationship with the intelligence community.
So let's talk about that. Have you spoken to current and former members of the intelligence community? What are they saying about this?
Well, I think people were shocked. They were outraged that he would do this. Look, it's an absolute fact that the Russians meddled in our 2016 election. The intelligence community, including the DNI, Dan Coates, have been crystal clear about that. Dan Coates, after the Helsinki statement by the president, reissued the statement and made it clear not only that they meddled in 2016, but they continue to do that. And so the president just seems constitutionally incapable of saying, yes, they did, without some sort of hedge, as he did in the statement we just shown, where it could have been anybody. Well, the intelligence community has not suggested there is any intelligence or evidence to suggest that anyone else was involved in the meddling. I think what happens is the president conflates allegations of Russian meddling with the idea of the allegations of his campaign colluding with the Russians. They're very different things. The Russians did meddle. We don't know what effect that had on the outcome of the 2016 election, and that doesn't necessarily mean there was any collusion, but he's very defensive about it. He can't mention one without saying there was no collusion.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in that statement right there, and we know that on his note, he made it a point, or someone made it a point, of writing out no collusion separately from the written statement that he was supposed to be presenting.
Exactly.
We heard in that press conference with Vladimir Putin that apparently Putin offered to assist the special counsel in its investigation. The president called this an incredible offer.
It's nonsense. I mean, I can tell you. So earlier in my career, I ran the Office of International Affairs at the Justice Department, where we were responsible for negotiating these treaties that govern the sharing of evidence and information. They're called mutual legal assistance treaties. The one with Russia and the United States was signed in 2001. It replaced an informal agreement from 1995. And it does allow for the sorts of things that Putin was suggesting, the exchange of interviews and that sort of thing. You would never make, Vladimir Putin is never going to make the 12 GRU officers available to American investigators to interview on Russian soil. nor is the United States ever going to make a Russian dissident available on American soil. And by the way, if you look at the technicalities, you'd have to say, is the crime that Browder is charged with in Russia, tax evasion, covered by the treaty? Most treaties don't cover that. So Putin, it was a head fake. Putin knew it was a head fake. He knew it was total nonsense. And President Trump was simply not well enough prepared to call him on it. He should have called him on it at the press conference that it was nonsense. And for sure, it was not a strong and credible offer by Vladimir Putin.
You know, some have suggested that, Dan Coats and perhaps some of the other intelligence chiefs should just step down. That, that the president does not have faith in them, that it was an embarrassment what occurred during the press conference. Michael Morell is one of the people who suggested that, hey, maybe they should just step down. What's your take on that?
I'll tell you, it took 26 hours for the president to provide the sort of convoluted clarification he provided yesterday from the cabinet room. We shouldn't assume that in the 26 hours between his statement in Helsinki and his statement in the cabinet room that some of those very senior intelligence officials didn't say, this has got to be cleaned up or I'm gone. And I think there were those discussions.
Very interesting. Fran Townsend, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.